So you're gonna score 300 points in fantasy on me this week? That's how it's gonna be?
I gotta tell you, I didn't even know who I was up against this week.
All right, welcome to Hat Trick. I am Jordan Dowler-Coltman, joined by Elliot Tanti and Braden Dowler-Coltman. We've got lots to cover this week. Busy week in the world of sports, lots going on. We will talk about the Oilers and the very impressive game Friday night against the New York Rangers. Great start, historic start for the Oilers. We will get to that in a little bit. We will talk about some other controversial topics before we get there. But before we do any of that, first, let me send it to my co-hosts quickly. How are you boys? Have you had a good week, Braden?
Ole, ole. I have had a good week. Yep, great week. I have very much enjoyed watching the Oilers and their dominance to start the season.
Elliot?
You know, yeah, this is why they pay me the big bucks, to have the strong opinions, to have the hottest of hot takes. And, you know, I'm just here that's my game. I saw an opening on the Toronto Maple Leafs not making the playoffs and I took it. And you know what? That's just why I'm here. That's my role in this podcast.
All joking aside, there is some very serious news we want to get to, and then some sort of silly news we want to get to, but we'll start with the more serious stuff. Obviously, we talked at length last week with Larice and Elliot about the Chicago Blackhawks scandal and the continuing fallout from the revelations from the investigation into how the Blackhawks handled Kyle Beach's allegations. Obviously, still the Blackhawks and Kyle Beach locked in a lawsuit over this just debacle of an entire system failure. And the NHL, of course, also now in a bit of damage control, to say the least. Monday, Gary Bettman and Bill Daly sat down with the media for several hours to try to do their best to stem the bleeding. Elliot, you often have very strong opinions about things, as you've already mentioned. On the weekend, I think you were kind of defensive or protective of the NHL. You suggested that Gary Bettman's initial response seemed to be on point, but following that press conference, there was a lot of criticism of Gary Bettman and just sort of the, I don't know, ham-handed nature in which they dealt with it, the way in which he couldn't really answer the questions about how the Arizona situation somehow mitigated more of a punishment than this situation, and all of those things. Long way around to say, as we continue into this week 2 now of sort of damage control for the NHL, are your feelings changed on how the NHL has handled this so far, Elliot?
Absolutely. That press conference was atrocious. We continually heard from the NHL that they were taking the situation seriously, and that there was going to be that there was something substantive and major that was going to come from when Gary Bettman and Daly spoke to the media. And what we got was emotionless lawyer speak, which is what we've gotten throughout this entire process for the majority of it. I mean, even Kevin Cheveldayoff this week coming off and basically read a prepared statement that you know was drafted by a lawyer. And for me, it goes back to what I said last week around self-interest. But I think there was enough outcry and enough anger about the way in which Bettman and that press conference went, that I think there are serious and really legitimate conversations going on right now about whether those two gentlemen are the ones that are meant to be leading this league moving forward. That's how atrocious that was. And if those conversations aren't ongoing, I'm going to continue to have them, because that was unacceptable from leadership in this situation. With all the resources around them, with everything that they had in terms of media training and media capacity, for that to be the response from the two most important people in the league's head office, unacceptable.
I'll get you in a second, Braden. I just want to slightly shift the conversation for a moment, because Elliot did bring up Cheveldayoff, and that's true. The Winnipeg Jets held a joint press conference where owner Mark Chipman and general manager Kevin Cheveldayoff addressed the media. You're right, Elliot. It was a lot of prepared stuff. Basically, the only news, I guess you could say, coming out of that is Cheveldayoff gave us a little bit of insight into what his conversation with Bettman and to the investigators was, and suggested that the one meeting that he is known to have been a part of, during that meeting, he was under the impression, he believes most of the people in that room were under the impression that they were dealing with a sexual harassment situation, not a sexual assault situation. That is his defense. I mean, obviously, we'll take him at his word, but obviously many other individuals' words have suggested that they should have known much more, and if they didn't, then someone was withholding that information from senior management. So again, it's one of those, you either didn't know and didn't ask the right questions to find out, or you heard just enough to bury your head in the sand or avoid it. Now, Kevin Cheveldayoff, as we said, obviously his answers were suffice enough for the league to not punish him in any way. What I would say, though, the takeaway, and then I'll offer this to you, Braden. Did you feel, though, that what Mark Chipman said was more interesting, considering he is a member of the board of governors and one of the owners who is responsible for Gary Bettman's job? He seemed to take almost personal responsibility for the failings of the governorship of the NHL, and suggested that it's a time for those owners who do feel like this situation was handled badly to start to say so and to look for change. He demanded that, or he suggested that he himself would be one of the the forebearers of that mission to try to bring about some structural change in the NHL. Do you believe what he had to say, and what were your thoughts on this situation? I know you didn't get a chance to weigh in last week.
Yeah, no, I didn't weigh in last week, but the conversation was great. I definitely tuned in. I think I did. I mean, yes, I did believe Mark Chipman, and I think there was a level of emotion that was brought to, and also a pace. Like when Mark Chipman was speaking, there was also like let me answer the question you're actually asking me, instead of I'm going to read this statement so that it blankets whatever this conversation leads to. The thing that stood out with me in I'm gonna jump back here to Cheveldayoff, though, is something here that stood out was that at no point did I hear him address what the actual policies are. What are the steps that you actually take when something like this happens? Yes, I know you were the assistant GM, which meant to you or anyone else you wanted at the time, where you were a coffee runner. That's not the case now. You are a GM of a team, and so I want to hear, instead of what I would have done differently or I will do better, I want to know what that is. I want to hear from you what that is, so that I feel confident knowing that you're in the right position to make change happen. I think the other thing with it all is, like we've talked about, hockey culture leads right back into what you guys are saying here with Bettman. This is somebody who has been at the helm for 27 years. So through 27 years, there has been a lot of change happen, and in some parts for the better. I quickly want to commend like the stuff that the Oilers and the Canucks are doing with their teams and integrating Indigenous culture or Diwali culture into, what's happening on and off the ice. But going back to the leadership here, you've got a commissioner who is unanimously booed by the fans of this league. Is this someone who you want at the helm?
I mean, most commissioners are booed by the fans of the league.
I don't think Adam Silver is.
Well, maybe not right now, but you give it a few more years, it'll happen. The truth is, though, that the commissioner is always going to be in the role of, he is the guardian of the money. He is the guardian of the owners. He is the employee of the owners. And in most of these major leagues, the responsibility falls to the owners to decide whether or not the culture surrounding their game is something they want. We do not have a single non-white owner in the NHL. We do not have I believe there's only one or two maybe women owners, usually parts of either a family that owns a team. I'm thinking of the Ilitches in Detroit. I believe one of the daughters of Mr. Ilitch, who passed away, is a member of that ownership group, but there is not a singular woman owner. This is an incredibly lacking in diversity league when it comes to upper management, right? And that is where these conversations have to start, because it has, diversity of ideas, diversity of perspectives, diversity of culture, diversity of all of those things we have seen in society lead to changes for the better. But I'll pivot one more time here to sort of continue the conversation, as we Elliot said very well on our last show. It's important for people with privilege, men, to have these conversations about what's going on, hockey fans to have conversations about what's going on. We have a little bit of a platform. Let's use it. Here's the next piece of this. There is a bit of a pattern that occurs when some type of big revelation like this happens, where you start to ask yourselves, this couldn't possibly be an isolated incident. And of course, it's never an isolated incident. Think of Harvey Weinstein and how that began a cascade effect of the Me Too movement that eventually gets lumped in with the bigger, conversation and eventually clumped into cancel culture for better or for worse. And all of that movement towards some progressive change in these industries that were stuck in their old ways because one or two incidents. So we already know that there is another situation going on in the NHL right now. Billy Garan is under investigation by the U.S. Center for Safe Sport because of allegations by Aaron and Jared Skuld, who Jared Skuld was an assistant coach of the Wilkes-Barre farm team for the Pittsburgh Penguins. He and his wife alleged that head coach at the time, Clark Donatella, assaulted his wife in a car while the three of them were driving. Wow. He reported this to then Pittsburgh assistant general manager, Billy Garan. For those who don't know, in the NHL, the assistant general manager is the general manager of the farm team. Most times, the AHL team is general managed by the assistant general manager of the big club. Billy Garan, apparently in this lawsuit, is alleged to have told them to keep it quiet. So we have the exact same situation that happened in Chicago to a much smaller scale, to be fair, but the same level of sweeping things under the rug, trying to keep things quiet. Subversion and all of that. Bill Garan obviously denies this. The league is investigating it. And now the U.S. Center for Safe Sport, which I believe has been built following the scandal with the sexual assaults in the gymnastics program in the United States, is now investigating as well. So already we're seeing this is not an isolated incident in Chicago. I'll step out of hockey for just a moment before I turn it back over to you, and also point out there's an investigation going on right now in the NBA into the management or owner, I believe, of the Phoenix Suns. And again, toxic culture, racism, all of the same things we saw with John Gruden, the same things we've seen in the investigation into Dan Snyder in Washington. We are I believe we talked last week, Elliot, about are we at the beginning of something or are we already knee deep in it? I think we're neck deep in it. Do you expect to see even more of this? And what are your thoughts now that the curtain has been pulled back? Is pro sports in its reckoning when it comes to this? Or is this just another dot on a long list of things? And are we bound to see this for the next decade? Is change possible, I guess, is the question, right?
I mean, I think change is possible. You have to I think you have to be positive, given that, at least we're getting to a place now where at least some of these things, and I stress the word some, are coming for, or people are coming forward, and these things are being talked about. Are we coming to a reckoning? I mean, that's yet to be determined. I still do not have confidence. I had a lot more confidence after our show on Saturday and some of the things that you had said last week or Sunday last week than I did after this week. And I'll circle back to that Bettman Daily press conference, but also just the way in which things are talking, in which, we're still talking about hockey, 9-1 starts and stuff, the thing about sports is that it's an ongoing and ever-changing story because there's always new stories going on. And it's why I think a lot of these social conversations that have impacted other major industries continue to major sports continues to elude them, right? There's just the nature of the beast that's very difficult to stick on and continue to be a part of. Where I do think a reckoning is beginning to occur is in sports media. I think even the statements and things that were said by Jeff Merrick and Elliot Friedman and others in the Sportsnet realm, that them of course being very highly connected to the league with their massive deal, their unwillingness to waver on continuing to follow up on these stories and continue to have the conversations gives me hope that the media will continue to track these things, and that's ultimately where we're going. If we're talking about a reckoning, that's where it's going to start, because the hard questions are going to have to be asked. And so that gives me a little bit of hope. But again, like I said, there's you've got this nature of the beast that is sports next to maybe a changing media narrative, but maybe not too.
Well, and as you say, I mean, you can, commend those journalists who are stepping forward. I think that there's also a lot of questions or perhaps a spotlight on them themselves. And I think that that's going on, right? We talked last week too about why on earth was Rick Westhead the only reporter who seemed to be on this story for almost a year. And then he also ended up in an interesting situation Monday during that press conference, a day or two after Frank Saravelli, who is still the chair of the Hockey Writers Association, penned an open letter to the NHL, basically reprimanding the NHL for how they had handled part of the press conference. It was made evident that almost an hour into the press conference was the first time that Rick Westhead was offered an opportunity to ask a question, and he was not given an opportunity to have a follow-up. And it became pretty clear to most of the journalists, I believe, in that room that they were trying to subvert his opportunity to ask them questions, either out of some form of really bad blackballing here, where we literally recognized that he was the guy who had cracked this whole thing wide open, and the NHL obviously should be absolutely ashamed of themselves if that's the case, or secondarily, it was a terrible, terrible coincidence. Regardless, the point being, the journalists who are asking those questions need to be given the opportunity to ask those questions. We were critical again of the Florida Panthers, who should also be ashamed of themselves for not making Joe Quenneville available the day that they had him coach, even though he was waiting for the call that eventually would end his tenure in Florida. It's just, again, that insular old boys club of protectionism that, again, has incubated this culture, right? And we have to ask these things. I think, again, moving forward, Elliot's right. This has to be change is only possible when it is industry wide, when it is within the league, when it was in the organizations, whether the players buy in, whether the management buys in, owners have to buy in, then the media infrastructure around it has to buy in, fans have to buy in. We have to continually support those people who step forward and are brave enough to take the risks to call people out. And we need to encourage those people to have this space and safe space to do that. Braden, I will give you the last word on this topic before we wrap it up.
You've said everything that needs to be said here. I think just the big thing is accountability, and the right steps have to be taken to make sure that the people who are doing wrong here are being held accountable, and that that change can happen.
All right, we'll leave it there. That's topic one.
The Ordinary Podcasting Network is excited to announce that we have launched a merch store on our website. The store is full of ordinary swag, including t-shirts, hoodies, and hats. You can pick out something awesome and support your favorite podcast today by heading over to ordinarypodcasts.com.
Okay, on to topic two, and we continue with controversy, this time in a different league. We finished our last segment talking about sort of the media's role in things, and I think that for me is the big part of this storyline, and whether or not the media is somewhat responsible for fanning the flames of what could have been a smaller story. Maybe it isn't a smaller story, and we'll dig into that. Aaron Rodgers obviously put in COVID protocol this week following a positive test, and as a result, it became evident that he was not vaccinated, as he had earlier insinuated at a press conference when he was asked during preseason. He responded to a question asked, "Are you fully vaccinated?" by simply answering, "I'm immunized," which led people, I think rightfully, to believe that yes, he was vaccinated. Turns out he was not vaccinated. And obviously the absolute lid of the sports media infrastructure blew off when this news came about. Rodgers defended himself a couple days ago on the Pat McAfee podcast. He basically claimed that he's allergic to ingredients in 2 of the vaccines and that he was scared of side effects from the 3rd. So he made a personal choice not to be vaccinated. He also then claimed that he is in the crosshairs of a woke mob that is trying to put him in a cancel culture casket, and that he is getting medical advice from Joe Rogan. Yeah. He also took a few shots at fellow professional athlete in the spotlight of the anti-vax movement, Kyrie Irving. Not directly, but he did suggest, though, that although he had chosen not to be vaccinated, he didn't want to be called a flat earther or anti-vax nut job. Taking a bit of a side swipe there at Kyrie and his flat earth opinions. So obviously, as I said, the media really had a field day and continues to have a field day with this. My question to Braden is, has the media made this way more of a story than it really is, or is Aaron Rodgers and this deceit as big a deal as we've all sort of been made out to be? Or is this just another example of the current media climate and how fast things escalate? Should we be as angry at Aaron Rodgers as I think the majority of people now are? My question.
Angry for what? Like angry that he lied, or angry that he wasn't clear about the idea, angry that he's taking advice from Joe Rogan and his ivermectin beliefs. I mean, it worked for Joe and that's great. And there's definitely research around what's more valuable in terms of being immune to COVID. The idea that he's allergic to something in the compound that makes up this vaccine is another whole thing that you go, well, then what do you do? But then also your league has a mandate. If you want to play in this league, you want to play football and make the money that you're paid to then I as a fan who pay, I expect you to follow these protocols, take part in this, especially the team part of it. How many of his team members actually knew that this was happening? I worry about that. And I think the other thing with Aaron Rodgers, and like right in the offseason, there was a whole bunch of, is he going to move? What's happening with Aaron Rodgers? There was just so much focus on him. And I don't think that he could escape this without this kind of focus and escalation, right?
Elliot, you follow the NFL pretty adamantly. What were your thoughts when this whole thing exploded?
Yeah. Also, if you were to say who's my team, I'd tell you it was the Green Bay Packers. Community-run organization, relatively good in the community. There's used to, have players that I respected.
It's not the green anymore. And gold, isn't it?
It's the green and gold. Absolutely.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah. Got me. No, but getting back to the issue at hand, I mean, I think, how the mighty have fallen. There's a couple pieces that I want to talk about here. One is, if this guy isn't the star quarterback that he is and the meaningful player that he was and returning MVP, I mean, he'd just get cut in any other situation.
Yeah.
Like the NFL is notorious for that and ruthless in terms of Odell Beckham got cut this week.
He was, that's right.
Like they're sort of, the league doesn't really care. Owners don't really care and don't really like this kind of stuff. So it's because of, it's the double standard around who he is, the position that he plays, and probably the fact that he's white, that he's allowed to, continue, that he was allowed to do this because the league knew he had applied for some special status around alternative therapies, and the NFL had said no and denied it and denied his appeal. So someone knew, right? They had to have in this space. So what? One, there's the double standard there in terms of that piece of it. I mean, the other thing is, just like everything else, when we talked about this issue before, show some leadership. Like, it's about being a role model in your community. It's about behaving in a way that's appropriate, that doing, you have an obligation to do proper research and emulate proper behavior in your community. And the unwillingness by Aaron Rodgers to do that is just deeply, 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 deeply troubling. And even if there was, and I think his excuse around the allergies to the two ingredients in the in Pfizer and Moderna, it is completely and utter bullshit. Yeah, there's the Johnson & Johnson vaccine, and his response to that question was talking about blood clots.
Blood clots, yeah.
Yeah, which is 1 in 1.5 million chance of actually happening, and may not even be statistically connected to the Johnson & Johnson vaccine.
And he's a professional athlete who makes millions to keep his body healthy.
Yeah, so just this sort of pearl clutching around one's personal health so as to really, I think he's probably just a baby and scared of needles, honestly.
Yeah. I think what's frustrating a little bit is that very quickly these conversations get so polarized and politicized because it becomes about, so many of these athletes who are making these decisions, Kyrie Irving, Cousins, Aaron Rodgers, all of these guys who are stepping forward and making it clear that they just do not want to get vaccinated, whatever their reason. What they're doing is they're feeding a much more dangerous and much bigger media infrastructure with ammunition of, look, this guy you look up to feels this way, just like me, and all of these things. And you end up with Aaron Rodgers, has access to amazing medical services. I'm sure that COVID for him has been treated incredibly well. I'm sure that he has the resources to be taken well care of. But there are so many people who aren't, who are following as Elliot said, these leaders and these role models. I don't believe that we should expect every one of our athletes to be a great role model all the time. That's just the reality of human nature. There's going to be some bad apples in there, and there's going to be some people who just make poor choices. But the truth is, when you are called out for it, and when it is made evidently clear that you have made a decision that is selfish, the response you have, I think, illuminates who you really are much more. And this rushing to almost just straight victimhood, to playing this idea of, the woke, left is out to get me. No one is out to get you. People are calling you out for your hypocrisy, for your absolute lack of leadership on this issue, an absolute lack of sound judgment. People pay and invest a lot of money into who you are as an athlete, not just the team that is paying you to play a game for a living, but also the fans who are supporting that infrastructure. They have, there is a responsibility you have there to make good choices. And if you don't make good choices, as is your right, whether we like it or not, then you are responsible for the consequences of your actions. And in this situation, like Braden said earlier, there's an element of this whole thing. For me, the most annoying and frustrating part about how the term cancel culture has been weaponized by predominantly the conservative movements of North America, and frankly, the rest of the world for that matter, is the fact that it is used as a blanket all defense for choosing not to take responsibility for one's own actions. People are not trying to cancel Aaron Rodgers. People are simply holding him responsible for his actions. That is the truth. People did not cancel Harvey Weinstein. He was held accountable for his actions, right? We can term it and call it whatever you want, brand it whatever you want. The truth is, accountability matters. It matters in sports. It matters in business. It matters in everyday life. Children are taught from a very young age that accountability matters. And again, it's most important in these situations. And the reason I believe that it is important that people are upset with Aaron Rodgers publicly is because he has not just let down the Green Bay Packers and his fellow teammates. He was selfish in his actions, and that is what has led to him not being able to perform on the field. His selfish actions have led to all of those fans not being able to see the best player on their team lead their team to some form of victory. That costs those fans. It costs the media that is expecting that product. And then again, every person who is now going to follow his lead, the same people who are following Joe Rogan and this ridiculous horse tranquilizer medication.
Whoa. Yes, it's not just horse tranquilizer though.
Regardless, it doesn't matter. It is not an approved safe method of treating COVID-19. That is the truth. And we should not. Here's the other thing.
People do take ivermectin every day.
The point is, if you are taking medical advice from a podcast host, stop.
Oh. No, listen.
Stop. I'm sorry.
Argument.
Joe Rogan is a hack when it comes to this type of. I just can't. I'm not. Yeah. All right.
Go ahead. I want to hear it.
I don't want to give a misogynistic, homophobic, transphobic human being any more platform than he already has when he's being paid tens of millions of dollars to indoctrinate people the exact same. Hundreds of millions of dollars, the exact same way that the rest of the right-wing media infrastructure does. And I have no time or patience for it, frankly. He is a wolf in sheep's clothing. He's just center enough that people don't consider him as wacky as Glenn Beck or as Alex Jones, but he's as much a snake oil salesman as any of them, as far as I'm concerned. He hides
Work
behind
hard.
the exact same things we said about Aaron Rodgers. It's that I'm being attacked by cancel culture and I'll defend myself and I'll suggest that anyone who comes at me is just trying to do that because they don't want to give me the opportunity to speak my mind. It's the same thing with the Dave Chappelle thing. All of it is just about victimhood, 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 victimhood. Stand up for what you say. If you believe in what you say, fine, but own it. Don't hide behind the, oh, this is my freedom of expression only. No, it's not. You believe these things. So then own that. Own that you are all of those things. That he has a huge following that listens to him.
He's not selling anybody
That's
on
not
anything.
true. It's not true. Just because he is not personally selling the product, it is no different than Donald Trump randomly suggesting something. When you are not a true trained medical professional, you should not be even suggesting what types of unproven medical treatment people should be taking. That is where it ends. And this goes back to the same thing.
There's a bigger here thing though. There is a bigger thing with ivermectin. We probably won't have time to get into this because I want to know, like, so why is it not a regulated or proven thing with the WHO?
Because it is currently, ivermectin is manufactured as a dewormer for livestock. Okay. I'm sure there are a lot of medications out there, Braden, but I'm sure there are a lot of medications out there that were designed for animals that human beings could safely take, but we shouldn't. But you shouldn't be taking that.
I think the point here, Jordan, that you made that's more important, because going back and forth, like none of us are qualified to talk about the effectiveness of ivermectin as a treatment for COVID. It's the same argument when it came to Trump, which was like, COVID is not as dangerous to you, Aaron or Donald, because you have the infinite resources available at your fingertips.
Or Joe Rogan.
Rogan.
The privilege of
because you have you can try every type of therapy and everything that is possible so as for you to be healthy. That is not the same experience of every other person in this.
Right. And I go back to what I said about
talks about, right?
I go back to what I said about Joe Rogan and this idea that he is now lodged in with this Rodgers thing. The suggestion that Joe Rogan is doing scientific research is bullshit. He is not someone you should be taking medical advice from, Aaron Rodgers. And if Aaron Rodgers but Aaron Rodgers did, Braden. Aaron Rodgers said in his press conference,
Joe Rogan would say that's the dumbest thing that you've ever done. Listen to my advice.
I think Joe Rogan would. I think Joe Rogan would say, thanks for listening. That's the truth of it. That's the truth of it, is at the end of the day, these people who have these platforms need to be smarter, understanding how what they say is taken. And that is what I'm saying. People are dying because they are thinking that the information they are getting from Facebook, from Twitter, from podcasts, from right-wing media is safe and proven science. It isn't. I'm sorry. Kyrie Irving, or at one point Andrew Wiggins, suggesting that they were doing their own research to find out what was best for their bodies. Are you a fucking scientist? Where's the peer-reviewed paper? What do you mean you're doing your own research?
Well, hold on a second. Because something like with Andrew Wiggins is very clear that this was a religious thing that he was going through. And he made the decision that it was better for him to get the vaccine. Good for him. But that is another level of this. And I'm not saying that it's right, but that is another level of this.
I mean, I think you talk to the majority of religious leaders in this world, and they'll tell you the right thing to do based on their religiosity is to get vaccinated, because that's the best thing for the greater good.
And likely that's what happened for Andrew Wiggins.
Stands for, right?
Sure.
But I do think that there is a proclivity amongst athletes, particularly in this new age, with all this new science around performance and how bodies react, whether that's, increases talking about sleep or diet or any number of things. Tom Brady and his whole thing around, his ability to play into his 40s is largely associated with trying out new age medicine and new age techniques around health and healing. And this is what sort of gets lost in this conversation, is there's the nut bar kind of right wing, freedom is everything, I won't get vaccinated because that's against my freedoms. But there's also this new age hippie sort of collective that I think the majority of these athletes fall into, that's more so around my body is who subscribe to these ideals, that the notion that one type of medicine could be good for everyone is antithetical to their belief, and that your body is, you have to tune your body to yourself. And I'm not saying it's right, and I'm not saying I agree with it, but I think we have to differentiate between sort of nut bars and people that are doing this for ideological reasons, and people that are under researched and undervalued and have deep personal beliefs related to the fact of this new age medicine. Because convincing them is two different conversations. Is all my point is. I'm not saying one's better than the other, or that the new age people are right. And I think that's where Aaron Rodgers falls into in this conversation. But the way in which you talk about it and the way in which things are, you engage with that group is very different than the ideological.
So with the Aaron Rodgers thing, I want to come back to this. How is it that the NFL has this other protocol or treatment thing that you can go through instead of, like, why is that even an option?
Well, I think he applied to it. I think he made it up and applied to it. You'd have to know, but he was denied it, right?
He was denied it. And so okay.
I don't think anyone's been, there was one player that tried this approach. We knew about it. We didn't know who the player was, but we were aware that it had been reported in media that someone had. We now learn it was Aaron Rodgers, and he decided to continue to go through with it and then not disclose properly his vaccination status.
And what are the further consequences other than he's now out?
I mean, I think that's the question. I think you'd be, I don't think there'll be anything significant. What I will say is I think odds are Aaron Rodgers is not in a Green Bay Packers jersey next year.
Which probably would have been the case regardless.
Yeah.
So, all right, well, we'll leave it here for now. I think we proved our point that this situation with Aaron Rodgers has led to much fervor in the media and on our panel here ourselves. Lots of emotions when it comes to these kind of issues. And I think that that's why we have these conversations. We will leave it here for now. That's topic 2. Do you or someone you know own a small business? Are you looking to grow or to reach new customers? Hey, why not let us help? Hattrick is looking for unique brands, businesses, and products to advertise on our show. You can find out how we can help spread the word about your business by contacting us on Facebook, Instagram, or Twitter. All right, topic 3, much lighter. We got to see 2, I think, really interesting things when it came to Oiler fans. One, a little bit of history. Kevin Lowe's number retired. And sent to the rafters. Of course, only people in Alberta saw it, because even though Sportsnet had promised not to black out the ceremony, about 5 minutes in, they hit the blackout button probably automatically, which is just, again, as an Oiler fan outside of Alberta, I'm just going to step on my soapbox for just a moment and go, what? Like, where are we in the 21st century here, NHL and Sportsnet? I get your deal. I get your deal was written like 7 years ago, and I understand that there are local media games and national games, but like, what the fuck? Like, get over it, move on. I am sorry if the business model of the NHL is built around the idea that I will somehow become a avid Canucks fan simply because those are the games available. It's just not true. It's never going to happen. And all you're doing is losing viewers and the money that comes with that. I just don't get it from a business perspective at all. Put it on national television. You've got like 7 Sportsnet channels. Put it on bloody one of them. Even if I have to pay like $2 extra or whatever for those games, just do that. Even if I buy the NHL Center Ice package, I can't watch blacked out games again. It's fucking ridiculous. That's my side note. Regardless, people in Alberta saw Kevin Lowe's jersey retired ceremony. I watched some of it later, and I'll see what you guys thought. But it was interesting for me because, we haven't seen one of these in a while. I think the last one of these kind of things was like the Glenn Sather night a few years ago when they sort of honored Glenn Sather. Obviously, he doesn't have a jersey to retire, but the Oilers have a policy. Your number goes to the rafters if you make it to the Hall of Fame. Kevin Lowe was the last sort of holdout of the Oilers dynasty, and he waited a long time considering how long Glenn Anderson and Paul Coffey and all the other contemporaries waited. But it was there. It felt like kind of out of place. Like, it felt out of time. It felt like they'd waited so long for this that he was an old man, and it kind of was uncomfortable watching it, because it didn't feel like we hadn't seen it in this new building. There was just something kind of weird about how it was presented. However, all that being said, congratulations to Kevin Lowe. well deserved as a player. And I think that what was really cool was the energy that it put in that building. And that's what we got to see. The Oilers came out a little flat, as teams often do following these pregame ceremonies, I think.
Oh, yeah.
I don't know what the all-time record of jersey retirement games are, but I'll bet you the home teams lose more than they win. I know the Oilers are something like 500 of these games. They came out real flat. It was like 4-1 going into the second, and it looked like the New York Rangers were just going to have a field day with them. But this team isn't the Oilers we have watched for a long time, because the Oilers we have watched for a long time, as Oiler fans know, would have folded up the tent and we just would have seen probably 2 or 3 more. But I have this weird feeling when I go into a second or third period trailing with this team that they are capable at any time of not only scoring, but getting a lead back. And that's exactly what happened. A great comeback. Our favorite Oiler right now, Jesse Puljujärvi, the Bison King, came to play. When he scored that second goal, I was listening to it on the radio. I was driving home from work, and it sounded like the roof came off. I've never heard that building louder than a playoff game. It was awesome. This is a regular season game in November, boys. In November. And they tied it. They gave the lead back up, and then we have the goal of the year. Maybe the goal of the decade. Maybe the goal of all time. Greatest goal of all time. I don't know. I certainly know that I've never seen anything like it. 4-on-1. He probably could have beaten another 2 guys if they'd been there. He probably could have gone 7-on-1 with those moves. He was as surprised as everybody in the building. Go watch the highlight. If you haven't done it, watch it over and over and over. It is absolutely majestic. I watched the Oilers game the other night here in Vancouver. There was a very large man sitting next to me who had a very thick accent, and he just turned to me at one point and goes, "It's absolutely majestic to watch McDavid skate." And I thought to myself, you are absolutely right, sir. I don't know who you are. You're a Canucks fan, but you are dead right. He is absolutely majestic. It's absolutely beautiful. And again, as we said, I think several months ago, if you're not watching this, start right now. Don't stop, because you are watching history. You're watching something special, whether they win the Stanley Cup at the end of all of this or not. We are watching an absolutely amazing season, 9-1. I will hit my mute button, turn it over to these 2 boys. I've said what I have to say. I know both of you are sitting at home. I mean, you're left without words. Braden, how you feeling?
What else do you say? 9-1 start to the season. This is a new record. This is a new dawn of. I'm speechless as well. It was stunning to watch a 4-1 game in the third turn into a 6-5 win at the end of it. Just utter dominance. I want to actually speak more on Warren Fogle. This guy is like a game changer. I have not seen. Now hold on a second. I can't let go of the fact that he gave up a ridiculous turnover. But he was just setting the team up. He was setting him up. He said to McDavid after that, he came off. He said, "Okay, I've set this up. Go and take on 4 of their players and win this game for us." But Warren Fogle is actually a stud. He is a big winger that we have not seen on the third line before. And I think that he was going to be one of those impact players as the season progresses.
Yeah. I mean, so let's start at the beginning, the Kevin Lowe stuff. I think why it's taken so long is probably a bunch of different things. I think they said they want to do it in the new arena. I think he's still like a member of the organization and working. And so that was sort of, I think, probably uncomfortable in some ways as well too.
Weren't they waiting for him to get the Hall of Fame?
Or they were waiting on the Hall of Fame.
They were waiting for the Hall of Fame. That's the rule, I believe, in the team. So the question is, who's next, and if they get another Hall of Famer before McDavid or not.
So Kevin Lowe stuff, that was great. I mean, I didn't hear it, but I was in the bar and watched it, and it's always emotional when those things go up. And the notion of retiring a jersey, difficult for Chris Russell, I'm sure, to give up the number 4 this year, but I'm just joking. I'm just messing around. 9-1 start. Yeah, really, really good. Really excited for the team. I think, last night was an example of something that Mike Smith used to continually say in post-game press conferences last year, when he was talking about just needing to make a save and saying, like, there's a lot of confidence in this group that doesn't matter how far behind we get. We have the skill and the talent to score the goal. So as long as I can just keep the pucks out of the net, then that's fine. I think our goaltending is. I'm a little bit concerned after last night. As I said to start the season, if Mikko Koskinen has to play a lot of hockey, then I worry about the team. He's played a lot of hockey recently, and he did not have a very strong game last night. And it does not look as though Mike Smith is ready to return as of yet. So we'll see when and if Skinner gets in and if that's a problem or not. But I do worry about that, I think, long term. Although that being said, I mean, this is 10 games. Koskinen has not played well in 2 of them, but otherwise he's really kept them in the game in a lot of other situations too. So it's even tough to be critical. So everyone can have a bad game once in a while, right? I mean, I think this is what we'd hope to see, is that we oscillate throughout the year between Draisaitl being the most dominant player in the league and McDavid being the most dominant player in the league. But either way, they're both on our team. And it just seems like that's the case right now. Draisaitl has had an outstanding week and continued. And now it seems as though Connor was not okay with that and decided to put the team on his back and perhaps produce the goal of the decade, as Jordan said, certainly of the year to start. So lots of excitement, lots of good things. One interesting thing for me is to see how this team handles adversity. I'd like to see, I'm not like to see, but we will eventually see this team lose 2 straight. And how do they deal with that, having to play that 3rd game? And the other thing is they're on a 5-game road trip now. And we'll see, they're going out east. They're going to play some of that competition in lots of places in the States. We haven't seen the Oilers play in over a year. And so we'll see how they match up against the rest of the league in other cities. But that's where you'd want to be heading into those, is 9-1 and feeling good. And that's where they're at right now. So
some good teams, like really good teams out east. You could even see it with the Rangers. Like this is a system that they had to work hard to kind of, control.
Yeah. And as Elliot said, it is still early. There's a lot of different kinds of question marks that play out. But again, you're 9-1 for a reason. This team has gone into games and worked teams over. This team has gone into games falling behind and worked their way back. And this team also is just stuck in close games, right? I mean, that game that I watched here in Vancouver was a goalie battle, right? It was Mikko Koskinen was great. It was also a bit of a post battle. Both teams had a little bit of unfortunate luck when it came to getting shots on goal, but both Thatcher Demko and Koskinen played great in the game I watched live. And I think what you get to start to see is that's nice to see, that no matter how the course of a game goes, this team is adaptable, it's flexible, and it's deep enough. That's the biggest difference. Braden brought up Warren Fogle, but for me, it starts even higher up than that. We have the 2 best players in the league, hands down right now, in Draisaitl and McDavid, obviously. But there's an argument that Puljujärvi is in the top 5 of the players in the league right now in terms of the way in which he's turning the offensive opportunities he's getting into goals, right? He's aggressive. He's opportunistic. He plays the puck. I remember talking with you guys maybe a year ago about the idea that like Puljujärvi still looked like he was kind of ahead of, like, over his skis. He was so fast, but it was like he was out of control at times, and he wasn't, in control when he had the puck as other players around him. And I feel like that's all caught up, and he's really just rounding into an amazing player. So there's Puljujärvi. You have a genuine number 3 guy on your team that we haven't had in a while. You have a number 4 guy right now in Nugent Hopkins, who's leading in assists, which is crazy. I think he's dead last in goals for players that are on the assist points, but that's regardless. He's putting apples up, and that matters. And then you've got Zach Hyman, who is absolutely as advertised. He's dogged on the puck in the corners. He wins those battles we were not winning. He wins those fights in front of the net the way we haven't seen since a guy like Ryan Smith or Nicholas Cronwall. He is aggressive. He is physical. He is fast. He is smart, and he's intelligent. All of the things you want in that player that's able to play both right now with McDavid or with the second line. And that's what's great about it. There's flexibility. And then you have a genuine third line. It's unfortunate to see Devin Shore get hurt, because I thought he'd been playing well. We'll see what the ramifications of that are. But Derek Ryan has looked good. He's winning faceoffs when we needed. He's penalty killing, and he's got some offensive flair. He was probably one of the better players in the first period last night when they were struggling. He generates energy. In the game again I watched here in Vancouver, Zach Kassian and Warren Fogle and Devin Shore were the best line in that entire game.
Oh yeah, totally. Shout out to Victor Tanti's favorite player, Zach Kassian.
There you go. Zach Kassian has come back. I mean, he's exactly what we want Zach Kassian to be, and he's starting to earn that big paycheck they gave him. It's great to see. And yes, there are question marks about the goaltending. What have I not talked about yet? Defense. Everyone is on this team about not being deep enough defensively, and yet they have played very good defensive games so far this season. Last night, yes, it's an outlier. There were a lot of bad turnovers. There were a lot of goals scored. for both teams, right? We are talking about the opponents also have the Norris Trophy winner, and they gave up 6 goals. So,
but am I back on track with Evan Bouchard's prediction here?
Yes.
And being
Evan Bouchard is
prophecy?
as advertised. He is very good with the puck.
Right.
He is good in his defensive zone, maybe like 75% of the time. That's rookie. If we remember what Ethan Bear was like a couple years ago when he first had his big come out season and was amazing, he still had bad turnovers. He was still a rookie. They're still going to make some mistakes. But Duncan Keith has played well. Cody Ceci has played really well. He is a big body and he back checks well. We're going to see whether or not this team just gets stronger and stronger. What I do believe, the one thing you cannot get in free agency, the one thing you cannot get at the trade deadline is confidence. That you have to earn, and this team is earning it. They know now on that bench when they gave up that Zibanejad goal, no problem. We're going to go get another one. And that's what's awesome to see, because that is what a winning team needs, as far as I'm concerned.
Somebody we haven't mentioned. Yeah, we haven't mentioned Chris Russell.
You're going to have depth guys, right? You're going to have guys who are out there who aren't going to be flashy and aren't going to make things done. They're going to make 1 or 2 big plays. Look, he hasn't put the puck in his own net yet. That's good, right?
That's actually good for him. That is a general play.
But I still think that having a guy like Chris Russell on this team is valuable, because you do have a lot of young defensemen.
Of course, yeah.
For what
and
you're
I think
paying,
that it's helpful.
For what you're paying him, absolutely. He's played 3 games. He's got 1 assist. He hasn't hurt. He's +1. He hasn't hurt you.
It's the same with Slater Cuckoo, right?
Cuckoo. That's exactly what I was going to say. Benson's played 3 games and they've been okay. McLeod,
they've been okay.
But
I think Tyler Benson's not ready. But you know who we might see again is McLeod now. I think McLeod will be back.
That'd be nice.
Because Shore's hurt. McLeod will be back.
The other thing too is
Turris has played well too. Turris has had a good couple games. He scored goals.
Well. The one that I think you guys are all missing on that I just have to note is that Darnell Nurse is continuing to play at the capacity he was before. He's not scoring the goals, but his shooting percentage was out of control last year. But he's still got 8 points. He's played 10 games. He's averaging 26 minutes a night. He's playing in all situations. He's fierce, and he's starting to turn me on that $9 million contract, which
is he turning you? Is he turning you yet on the prediction I made at the beginning of the season that he's capable of winning a Norris Trophy?
No, that was a bad take.
Not yet. Too
early.
More
they
goals.
beat the reigning defending Norris Trophy winner last night in Adam Fox. So
he will be in the discussion. He will be in the discussion.
And I think if this team does as well as they are now, trending towards, that he'll get a lot more eyeballs on him than he usually would have, and that's going to help him a lot. The question I want to leave with both of you right now is this: who wins the Hart Trophy? Early season bold predictions: is it McDavid or is it Leon Draisaitl? At this point, those are the only 2 options right now. Who else?
Ovechkin's having a good year so far. But
okay,
the Hart Trophy. Connor wins this. Connor does. He will.
Now, who has more points, Connor or Leon?
I think Leon will. Yeah.
Leon has more. Leon's on fire.
Leon has more points, but Connor is more sustained. I think you see Connor getting more 4 or 5 point games than Draisaitl throughout the year, and that's kind of what's the differentiator. I mean, the question here is, what's the limit in terms of McDavid this year? Is it 150? Is it 175?
No.
Well, if you're telling me Leon's going to get more points, then what's Leon?
No, I don't think he will get more points. I think Leon will fall off to Connor, but I think there's. I mean,
what if they share it? Can they share it?
No, they can't. They cannot share.
Leon always will have is that Leon will.
I suppose there could be a tie, but it'd be very hard.
But the issue with Leon always faces is he's not going to win the Hart, because everyone will say, even if he beat him in points.
He did win the Hart. He beat him 2 years ago for the Hart, Elliot.
I know.
Wasn't Connor injured that year for half the season?
Yeah,
sure. Maybe that's what it was.
But that's what I mean. That's the only reason. Right?
No, I think before COVID hit, Draisaitl was on fire. Anyway, that has been our conversation about the Oilers this week. Tune in next week I'm sure we'll have more amazing goals and more amazing things to discuss as we get more and more to the season. 9-1, boys. It's awesome. Woo! It's fun. Thank you both. We went way over time this week. So I apologize to our listeners, but thank you if you stuck around to this point. And we will talk to you again next week. That's Hat-Trick. Hat-Trick is a member of the Ordinary Podcasting Network. It's produced every week by Jordan Dowler Coleman and Braden Dowler Coleman. You can follow us on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook. Thanks for listening.
Ovechkin, 18 points. 18 points in 10 games. 10 goals. I think he's going to catch Gretzky.
The Ordinary Podcasting Network wishes to acknowledge that the lands on which our conversations take place include Treaty 6 territory, the traditional meeting ground and home for many Indigenous peoples, including the Cree, Dene, Saulteaux, Blackfoot, Métis, and the Nakota Sioux peoples, as well as the unceded territories of the Coast Salish peoples, including the territories of the Musqueam, Squamish, and Tsleil-Waututh nations.
We acknowledge the many First Nations, Métis, and Inuit whose footsteps have marked these lands for generations. And we extend our appreciation for the opportunity to live, create, and share stories on these territories.
The Ordinary Podcasting Network intends to engage in conversations and dialogue which acknowledge that reconciliation is not a destination, but a journey, and that we remain committed to practicing our craft in a decolonized space.